Boss fired me after 25 years, then bragged to my team, "Dead weight is gone, we're leaner now." I came back a month later as a consultant, with a bigger paycheck than him. He whispered, "What the darn are you doing here?" I smirked, "Cleaning up your mess." He was gone in a week. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those gray, overcast ones where the clouds look like they've been holding their breath for hours. I was sitting at my usual desk by the window, sipping lukewarm coffee from a cracked mug that said "World's Okayest Employee." 25 years in the same building, same firm, and I still use the same mug my daughter gave me as a joke back in high school. Felt right. I've been up since 4:30. Couldn't sleep again. That had become a regular thing. Between the stress of supply chain chaos and the creeping dread I'd been ignoring for months, it felt like my brain refused to shut off. My wife, Marla, kept telling me I was burning out. I kept telling her I was fine. What else was I supposed to do? Quit and do what, exactly? Garden? My name's Tobin Mallory. I'm 52, live just outside St. Louis, and until recently, I was the senior logistics coordinator for Triwave Freight Solutions. Fancy title for guy who makes sure trucks don't show up to the wrong warehouse. I'd worked there since I was 27. Watched the place go through 3 owners, 5 CEOs, and more system upgrades than I can count. I wasn't flashy. Didn't wear tailored suits or say things like, "Let's circle back." I just got the job done. Always had. I was the kind of guy who knew every route from Flagstaff to Fort Wayne by memory. I had relationships with truckers that went back decades. If a route collapsed, I had a plan B and C before the system even flagged the error. Then Blaine Coster showed up. Now, Blaine was the type of guy you knew was trouble the second he smiled at you. Too polished, too clean. He had this air about him like he thought everyone over 40 should be sterilized and replaced with college interns who could code in their sleep. I remember the first time I met him, he walked in with a thin iPad and said, "So, which one of you is the dinosaur?" He laughed like it was a joke. I didn't. He had a background in optimization. That's how they pitched it to us. He was going to modernize our operations. Trim the fat, they said. Streamline the workflow. I knew what that meant. We all did. But I never thought he'd come for me. I kept my head down, did my job, and made sure the chaos stayed under wraps. I even covered for a few of his screw-ups early on, figured he was just green. You don't climb to VP at 35 without knowing how to make someone else take the fall, right? Then one morning, out of nowhere, I got an invite to his office. The message just said, "Need to chat, 10 a.m. I walked in, and he was already seated, legs crossed, wearing some kind of cologne that smells like burnt citrus and ego. There was a stack of folders on his desk, none of them mine. He didn't look up right away. Just tapped at his iPad like he was checking fantasy football stats. "Tobin," he said finally, "have a seat." "Everything all right?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Well," he let the word hang in the air like it had a scent. "I wanted to talk about the direction of the company." I knew it. I knew it. I braced myself. "Okay." He looked up, and I swear, he almost looked excited. "We've been evaluating our workflows, looking at redundancies. We're pivoting to a leaner structure, one that's more agile and future-facing." There it was. The buzzword device. "You're firing me," I said flatly. He blinked, like I'd jumped ahead in the script. "Well, we're letting you go, yes. Your position has been deemed redundant." I looked at him. Hard. 25 years. No warning. No transition. Just gone. "What about the West Coast freight lanes?" I asked. "Who's going to manage that mess?" "We've decided to outsource that portion," he said, and shrugged like it was no big deal. "You don't have anyone who knows the port managers. Half those guys won't even take a call unless it's from someone they trust." He gave me a sympathetic look like I was a dog with a limp. "Tobin, you've been with us a long time. We appreciate your service. You'll receive 2 months severance." 2 months? I nearly laughed. "After 25 years? That's standard policy," he said, standing up as if the meeting was over. I stood, too. My mouth was dry, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. I left the building with my head held high. Didn't take the box of desk junk. Didn't say goodbye. I drove straight home, sat in my driveway, and just stared at the steering wheel for what felt like an hour. The worst part wasn't the job. It was what I heard 3 days later from Haley, a friend in dispatch. He said it right in front of the team, she told me over the phone. "Called you deadweight. Said, 'Deadweight is gone, we're leaner now.'" I didn't speak. Just listened. And the way he said it, she added, "Like you were some old refrigerator, he finally got hauled off the curb." Marla came out to check on me halfway through the call. She saw my face and didn't ask. I didn't tell Taryn either. Our daughter was in college, dealing with exams. I couldn't put this on her. Couldn't bear the thought of her worrying about her old man, sitting at home like some washed-up has-been. The first week was darn. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I just kept wondering what I did wrong. What I could have done differently. Then, on day 10, I went out for a walk. Just needed air. Space. I ended up walking 5 miles that morning. Did the same the next day. It helped. Somewhere along the third week, I started pulling out old notebooks, files I'd saved from years back. I had notes on routing algorithms I'd designed myself, spreadsheets I'd built from scratch to optimize fuel costs. Stuff no one else had seen in years. I emailed a few old contacts. Just small stuff. Hey, saw you were having shipping delays, mind if I take a look? One guy responded. Then another. Then I got a call. A logistics startup in Chicago called PortShift had heard about me through one of their investors. Said they needed someone to come in and help restructure their West Coast operations. They'd grown fast, too fast, and their supply lines were a mess. I told them I wasn't looking for a full-time gig. No worries, they said. We're thinking of a consultant. Flexible hours. You pick the terms. Then they sent the offer. It was double what I'd been making. No benefits, sure, but no Blaine either. I said yes. And then, 2 weeks later, they sent me to St. Louis. The building they rented office space in? Same damn business park as TriWave. I'll pause here. Let me know when you're ready for what happens next. Because that's where things get real. I stood in front of that glass door like I'd never seen it before. Same etched logo, same little buzz at the security panel. But it all felt different now. The last time I walked through it, I had 25 years of sweat in my bones and a steady paycheck. This time, I had a contract in my bag, a new title, and something I couldn't quite name boiling just under the surface. PortShift had leased a few offices on the 3rd floor for a short-term audit project, and I was the point guy. Their plan was to either partner with TriWave on shared routes or identify weaknesses they could exploit and do it better. It was business. Cold, clean, cutthroat. But for me, it was personal. The receptionist didn't recognize me. New girl, young. Looked up from her phone and gave me a professional smile. Hi, welcome to TriWave. Do you have an appointment? Sure do, I said, showing her the email confirmation on my phone. I'm here with PortShift Consulting. We're scheduled to meet with your operations team today. She nodded, handed me a visitor badge. 3rd floor. Conference room C. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, needed a minute to breathe, to get my head right. My hands were sweating, and I could feel my heart doing this weird flutter thing in my chest. I hadn't seen any of them since I was shown the door. When I pushed open the conference room, Haley was the first one to spot me. She did a full double take. Tobin, she blurted. Hey, Haley. She got up and hugged me, quick and tight, whispering into my ear, oh my God, what the darn is going on? I smiled. Long story. I'll explain after the meeting. A few other familiar faces were there, Jared, Maureen, and Ken, all part of the middle management tier. People I'd worked with, mentored, covered for over the years. They looked stunned. Then the door opened again, and in walked Blaine. Same shiny haircut, same expensive watch, same smug energy, until he saw me. He froze mid-step, blinked, then blinked again. I swear to God, it was like he couldn't compute what he was seeing. What the darn are you doing here? He muttered, not even trying to hide it. I didn't flinch. Just stood up, shook his hand like we were old college buddies. Blaine, I said, you remember me. Tobin Mallory. I'm working with PortShift now. We're auditing regional logistics to explore a partnership. His jaw clenched. I could see the vein just above his eyebrow start to twitch. No one informed me PortShift was bringing in you, he said, voice tight. Guess that's above your pay grade now, I replied, smiling. I could feel Haley suppressing a laugh behind me. The meeting started and I got right to it. No posturing, no slick charts or buzzwords, just facts. I'd already reviewed the TriWave shipment data, the fleet schedules, the backlogged ports. I asked pointed questions. I showed PortShift where the weaknesses were bluntly, but professionally. When I brought up the West Coast delays, Blaine cut me off. That issue being resolved. We've implemented new routing software that's caused a 12% increase in late shipments and dropped on-time delivery rates by 18%, I said, cutting him right back. The room went silent. I tapped a spreadsheet on the projector. These numbers are from your own internal system. PortShift's looking to partner with someone who can handle growth, not someone choking on their own automation. Blaine looked like he was trying not to explode. The rest of the TriWave team? They looked somewhere between fascinated and deeply uncomfortable. A few were clearly enjoying the show. After the meeting, Haley followed me into the hallway. Okay, you have to tell me what the darn is going on. I gave her the short version. Getting fired, hearing what Blaine said, getting picked up by port shift. She shook her head, stunned. Unreal. And now you're back here, running the show. Not quite, I said. I'm here to help port shift make a call, partner, or pull out. And what do you think? I raised an eyebrow. Honestly, I think Blaine's burned this place to the ground. And he's either hiding it or too blind to see it. Haley looked around, lowered her voice. You're not wrong. Morale's crap. Everyone's scared. We had 3 resignations in the last 2 weeks. One guy quit mid-shift and just walked out. Jesus. Yeah, she said, glancing back toward the conference room. People are going to be thrilled you're here. But you watch your back. Blaine's petty. He'll try to make your life darn. I nodded. He already did. That's why I'm here. That afternoon, I set up shop in one of the temporary offices port shift was leasing upstairs. They gave me full access to TriWave's system. After all, we were supposedly considering investing resources into their network. Every file I opened painted a worse picture. Misrouted shipments, inflated contracts with underperforming carriers, poor driver retention. The system looked like it had been duct taped together after someone took a sledgehammer to it. I sent my daily report to port shift COO, and 15 minutes later I got a call. Tobin, she said, how bad is it really? Bad, I said. They're putting up a good front, but if you dig, you'll find they're hemorrhaging efficiency. And the guy running the show? He's way over his head. You recommend pulling the plug? Not yet, I said. Let me dig a little deeper. If there's something salvageable here, I'll find it. But if not, well, Blaine was going to have a lot more to worry about than my badge showing up in his hallway. That evening, I sat alone in a bar across the street, nursing a whiskey sour, thinking about how strange it all was. How fast things had turned. How quiet revenge could be. I didn't want to admit it, but part of me enjoyed watching Blaine squirm. The same guy who humiliated me in front of the company was now sitting in meetings where I held the leash. I hadn't said a word out of place, hadn't taken a single cheap shot. But the reckoning? It was already happening. And deep down, he knew it. The next morning, I walked into the TriWave building with purpose. By now, word had spread. People who hadn't spoken to me in years were stopping me in the halls. Hey, Tobin, damn, it's good to see you back. Didn't know you were with port shift now. That's badass. I kept it humble. I wasn't here to gloat, even if Blaine's face kept tightening every time someone smiled at me. And he was trying to keep cool, but I could tell he was unraveling. You can only fake composure for so long when you know the walls are closing in. By noon, we had a cross-department strategy session. PortShift had invited TriWave's regional leads to provide insight on coordination efforts, basically a feeler meeting to see if a merger made any sense at all. Blaine opened the meeting, as expected. I'd like to start by thanking PortShift for their interest in collaborating with us, he said smoothly, his smile painted on. We're confident in our current infrastructure and optimistic about what we can build together. Then he turned to me, offering this faint little smirk. And of course, it's great to have Mr. Mallory joining us again. Some faces just don't know when to retire, huh? The room laughed a little. Nervous. Confused. Some of them exchanged looks. I leaned forward, folded my hands. Retirement's a funny thing, I said. Some folks retire by choice. Others get walked out by someone who thinks experience is dead weight. Silence. I saw Ken glance down at the table. Maureen rubbed her eyes. Blaine cleared his throat. All right, moving on, but it was too late. I wasn't there to play nice anymore. PortShift had asked me to speak next, and I wasn't going to sugarcoat the facts. I pulled up a slide, nothing fancy, just raw data from the last 6 months. Missed deliveries, shipping penalties, lost clients. All of it. These numbers, I began, aren't just statistics. They're symptoms. This company is bleeding out because the people who understood the flow of freight were cut out and replaced by systems that don't adapt. Blaine, I said his name slowly, deliberately, you replaced human instinct with automation, and it's failing. Those systems are industry standard, he said defensively. Every modern freight company is shifting toward AI-based routing. Sure, I said. But I don't know that the warehouse foreman in Tacoma refuses to unload a truck with New Jersey plates after noon because of a grudge from 2016. I do. Chuckles. Haley smirked behind her laptop. And AI, it doesn't know, I continued, that your shipping partner in Fresno has been overbilling for 3 months. You'd have known that if you hadn't laid off the guy who caught it every quarter. Blaine looked like he wanted to throw the projector out the window. After the meeting, I stepped into the break room to get some air. Ken followed me in. Tobin, he said, glancing around, are you really here to take over? I shook my head. Not my call. I'm just reporting what I see. He sighed. Place hasn't been the same since you left. Honestly, everyone's been walking on eggshells. He doesn't listen, does he? Ken hesitated. He listens to himself. Nobody else. And upper management? They don't ask questions as long as the charts look good. But I think they're starting to hear the whispers. Then they're about to hear a whole lot more. That night, I had dinner with Marla at a little Italian place we used to go when we first got married. She'd been my rock through the whole thing, never once told me to get over it, never once doubted me. But even she was surprised at how everything had flipped. "Do you feel like you're getting revenge?" she asked, sipping her wine. I thought about it. "Not revenge," I said. "I'm just setting the record straight." She smiled. "Well, for the record, I always thought you were the backbone of that company. Too bad they didn't. Now they do." I reached across the table, took her hand. I hadn't felt this grounded in months, maybe years. And yet, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The next day, I had a private meeting with Triwave CEO, Gloria Renshaw. She'd flown in from the East Coast after reviewing my preliminary report. She wasn't a warm woman, sharp, precise, and always 3 steps ahead, but she was honest. "You've put together a damning analysis, Mr. Mallory," she said, flipping through the binder I'd given her. "I didn't write it to be damning. I wrote it to be accurate. And what's your recommendation?" "Blaine's not salvageable," I said, without hesitation. "The team has no confidence in him. The infrastructure's flawed because he refuses to adapt. He's cutting corners and lying about it. If Portshift invests in a partnership, we'll inherit a ticking time device." She closed the folder and sat back. I trusted him, though he was aggressive, but visionary. He's aggressive, all right. But vision without wisdom is just guesswork. She nodded slowly. "Understood." That was all she said. But I knew what it meant. Back at Triwave, Blaine was pacing. I saw him through the glass wall of his office, on the phone, gesturing wildly, jaw clenched. A man trying to stop a train with a toothpick. I went back to my desk and finished my report. Clear, direct, and final. I didn't know exactly what the next few days would hold. But Blaine? He was running out of time. The next 2 days felt like I was living in 2 separate timelines. On one hand, I was neck-deep in logistics data, sitting in a borrowed office under Portshift's letterhead, quietly building the most honest autopsy Triwave had ever seen. On the other hand, I could feel Blaine unraveling floor by floor. Every hallway I walked down, I'd catch someone leaning out of a cubicle just to watch me pass. Whispers followed. The break room got quiet when I walked in. Not out of resentment, just anticipation. People knew something was happening. They just didn't know what yet. I was methodical. Met with every department lead. Sat down with shift managers. Even pulled a night shift at the West Hub just to see how the warehouse was actually running under Blaine's new systems. Spoiler, it wasn't. Forklifts sat idle. Drivers showed up for loads that weren't staged. Orders were incomplete or mislabeled. The floor manager, a gruff old guy named Roddy, practically hugged me when I introduced myself. "Darn, Tobin Mallory? Thought you were dead," he said, then laughed like he didn't mean it. I asked him straight up, "How bad is it, Roddy?" He leaned on a pallet jack, wiped his forehead. "Bad. Worse than it looks. These systems Blaine shoved down our throats? They're crap. Spend more time fixing tech bugs than moving freight. Why hasn't it been flagged?" Roddy looked over both shoulders, then lowered his voice. "Because no one's reporting it. People are scared. He's got everyone thinking they'll get axed for speaking up." That hit hard. I knew fear. I'd lived in it during those final months before Blaine fired me. But now I could see it was everywhere, soaked into the walls, written between every line of the spreadsheets I read. Back in the office the next morning, I reviewed security footage from the past month. Found one incident that made me stop mid-sipping my coffee. A junior dispatcher named Jonas, maybe 23, had been publicly berated by Blaine in front of half the floor. Something about rerouting a freight line through Kansas City instead of Tulsa. The kid had made the right call, by the way. But Blaine didn't care. He'd humiliated him. Then reassigned him to warehouse intake, lowest position in the logistics department. I found Jonas later that day, sitting at a metal desk in the corner of the intake office, sorting labels like he was in detention. "Jonas," I said, pulling up a chair beside him. "You got a second?" He looked up, startled. Yeah, of course." "I saw the footage," I said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." He looked around, confused, then dropped his voice. "Thanks. But I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention it to anyone. I'm just trying to keep my head down." "You shouldn't have to," I said. "And you won't have to for much longer." He looked up at me like I'd said something magical. Hope. That's what he was looking for. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that what came next wasn't going to be easy for anyone. By Friday, the temperature in the building had shifted. Not literally. But the energy was different. You could feel it in the way people talked, how they moved around the floor. Rumors were flying. Did you hear the board call an emergency meeting? Someone saw Gloria Renshaw land at Lambert in a private jet. I heard Blaine's packing up his office. None of it confirmed. But all of it is very, very possible. Blaine stopped acknowledging me altogether. Wouldn't make eye contact in the halls. Dodged meetings. Delegated every port shift call to one of his underlings. He was in hiding, his version of a siege. I stayed out of his way. I wasn't interested in a screaming match or theatrics. This wasn't about rubbing salt in a wound. It was about accountability. Saturday morning, I was back in the office for one last review. My final report was due Monday, and Portshift was planning to present it to Triwave's executive board that same day. I sat in my corner office, blinds open, sipping coffee and staring at the massive whiteboard I'd filled over the past 2 weeks: charts, call logs, performance metrics, emails, meeting notes. A map of mismanagement. And every road led back to Blaine. Then I got the call. Not a scheduled one. A direct line. From Gloria. "Tobin," she said. "You've made your case thoroughly. The board asked for a private debrief on Monday. You'll join me?" "Of course." She paused. "They're interested in a potential transition plan. One that involves you, not just Portshift." I leaned back, let the weight of that hit me. "What kind of transition?" "We'll talk specifics on Monday. But be prepared." That was it. Be prepared. I sat there for a long while after she hung up. Just thinking. About what I'd do differently. About who I'd bring back. About how you rebuild something that's been gutted from the inside out. About how I was becoming the man I didn't expect to be, the guy at the top. And the closer I got to that moment, the more I realized this wasn't just about Blaine anymore. It was about every single person in that building who'd been dismissed, humiliated, overlooked. It was about restoring something real. Something human. On Monday morning, I walked into the building again, this time with my final report under one arm and a strange mix of adrenaline and clarity in my chest. Haley met me at the door. "He's in his office," she whispered. "Hasn't come out all morning. People are saying today's the day." I just nodded. "We'll see." The board meeting was in an hour. And whatever happened in that room would change everything. Monday morning, 8:58 a.m. I stood in the hallway outside Triwave's top-floor conference room. Behind those glass doors were the board members, Portshift's executive team, and Gloria Renshaw, who'd flown in from New York again that morning. I had the final report tucked in a clean, blue binder under my arm. My shirt was pressed, my boots were polished, and I was calm. Not smug. Not nervous. Just steady. The doors opened. Gloria gave me a slight nod. "Tobin," she said. "We're ready." I stepped inside, and there they were, 7 people in expensive suits, a mix of gray hair and ambition. They looked at me like a stranger, but listened like I was holding a map out of a burning building. I presented the data first. No dramatics. Just facts. Missed targets. Poor decisions. Staff turnover. Loss of key clients. All of it traced to leadership decisions made over the last 18 months. One of the board members, a quiet older man named Ray, finally set his papers down and looked right at me. "If we keep Blaine," he said, "what's your projection for the next 2 quarters?" I didn't flinch. "Decline. Steep. You'll lose 2 major clients before summer's over. Portshift will walk. And the team won't survive another 6 months of his leadership." Silence. Another board member, Joan, the no-nonsense type, nodded slowly. "And if we remove him?" I closed the binder. "Then you can rebuild. You have good people here. Talented people. You just need someone who remembers that leadership is about listening, not lecturing." Gloria leaned forward. "Portshift is prepared to help with that rebuilding. We'd like to offer a transitional partnership," she said. "And we'd like Tobin to lead that transition." Eyes turned to me. I said nothing for a beat. Just looked back at them. Then, quietly, I said, "I accept." When I left the boardroom, I didn't go back to the office right away. I took a walk around the floor. The one I used to call home. Said darn oh to old coworkers. Shared a few smiles. No one knew yet. But they would soon. An hour later, security walked into Blaine's office. I watched from across the floor as he stood up, stunned. He was mid-call, and I guess he thought it was a mistake. The security guard handed him a sealed envelope. He opened it, read the contents, and his face turned the color of spoiled milk. He looked around, eyes scanning for me. Found me. We locked eyes. He crossed the room fast, tie swinging, chest puffed. He was breathing hard when he got to me. "What the darn is this?" he hissed, voice low. "You did this?" "You little..." I held up a hand. "Calm. You did this," I said. "I just told the truth." His eyes darted. "You think this is over? You think they'll keep you?" They already asked me to lead the transition. His face crumpled for half a second. He tried to fix it, tried to find some thread in his mouth, but it didn't come. He looked around, saw the floor watching, and for the first time, I saw him not as a boss, not as a threat, but as what he really was, a man who built a throne out of ego and now had nowhere to sit. He turned without a word and walked out. No fanfare, no speech, just the sound of his expensive shoes on linoleum. That afternoon, I held my first meeting in the conference room, the same room where he'd once called me redundant. The team filed in: Haley, Ken, Maureen, even Jonas from the intake office. They looked nervous, unsure. I stood at the front of the room and smiled. First things first, I said. No more fear. We're done with that. Heads lifted. Shoulders relaxed. Second, I continued, I'm not here to be a king. I'm here to rebuild this company with all of you. Every voice matters. Every role matters. You've been ignored, overworked, undervalued. That ends now. Haley beamed. Ken gave a quiet clap. Jonas actually laughed. The room felt light for the first time in a long while. That night, I left the building with the lights still on behind me, the hum of printers and laughter from the warehouse echoing in the air. Marla was waiting in the car. How'd it go? She asked. I climbed in, leaned back in the seat. I said, we just turned the ship around. Blaine was gone. Rumor was he tried to file a wrongful termination claim. Didn't go anywhere. The board had the receipts. All of them. Me? I didn't take his old office. I gave it to Haley. She earned it. I set up my desk in a shared space, right next to the people actually moving freight, solving problems, doing the work. I talked to everyone. I asked what they needed. And slowly, the team came back to life. Morale went up. Productivity followed. We started winning clients back. And port shift? They made me an offer to take over logistics company-wide. I said yes, but only if I could stay based in St. Louis. With my people. They agreed. Blaine fired me after 25 years, then bragged about it to the team. Called me deadweight. A month later, I walked back in with a consultant badge and a bigger paycheck. Took a slow, steady breath. Cleaned up the mess he made. Watched him walk out with nothing but a box and a bruised ego. No yelling, no revenge plots. Just the quiet, satisfying sound of justice showing up with a clipboard. And a familiar name on the office door. T. Mallory, Regional Director. Not bad, for deadweight.